Thank you so much, Mr. Bickersteth, for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. First, let's lay the foundation by having you describe Nigeria's financial space in comparison with other countries on the continent. How would you describe it?
Yes, the first understanding we need to have is that finance has a range of services that we should recognize. There's savings, there's credits, there's mortgage, there's pension, there's insurance. And in other countries, there's leasing, there's e-commerce, there's capital markets. So all these financial sectors that I just mentioned fall into the general definition of financial services. Even though there's a general word that covers all of them, they all have various services or sectors that they focus on. In Nigeria, we largely speak about transactions, which you can simplify as having a bank account. So there is a lot of talk about 65% of Nigerians having a bank account. And that is somehow extended to financial inclusion, which is not the complete picture of the financial space as we know it. So for example, only 3% of small businesses in Nigeria today have access to formal credit, and it's fundamental to economic growth. When you compare it to other countries, who, for example, in a lot of developed countries, they use mortgage to measure access to finance, and a lot of developed environments target that at least 60% of their population should have a mortgage account, which is housing and is like the foundation of every other financial service, because it's more difficult to carry away land or house as compared to other forms of services. In other environments like China, they use e-commerce to measure, and for them, essentially every small business should have an e-commerce account. In Nigeria today, and if we look at what the current government is trying to do, they are trying to activate access to credit. So I guess that will be our measuring yardstick for Nigeria. And generally, the target is that by 2030, we should be able to move the needle that 3% of small businesses in Nigeria today should increase to about 70% that have access to credit as one of the key financial services in our environment.
So you've talked about some of the issues. Now, you've talked about what the government can do or is doing that might actually help. Let's scale it down to other private players within Nigeria's financial landscape. What unique roles do you think they can play to actually push Nigeria closer towards full financial inclusion?
For the private sector, their role is to innovate. For governments, their role is to provide the environment, the infrastructure for that innovation to thrive. But they both work hand in hand. If government does not create that environment for innovation, there's very little the private sector can do. In actual fact, they can become very frustrated. An example would be what the fintechs are currently doing. And they're able to create what is called mobile wallet accounts, which a lot of small businesses are now able to open. But those innovative solutions would not have come in place if those fintechs were not licensed in the first instance by central bank in this case, as an example. And some states are issuing out lending licenses, for example, and that is also allowing some private operators to also innovate around that space as well.
All right, so we are going to go on a break, Sola. When we return, we are going to look at it from the issue or from the angle around those who are actually circumventing the system. I mean, we see a little bit of improvement on the part of fintechs in collaboration with government. But then what about POS agents and some other, bank officials said to be profiteering from some very shady deals within the sector? We'll look at that after these short timeouts. So we are talking about how to enhance financial inclusion in Nigeria's financial system. We have been talking to Sola Bickersteth, who is the Executive Director, Financial Inclusion Centers at FIC Professionals Network PLC. Thank you so much, Sola, for staying with us. So yes, you've talked about certain improvements and what the government has been doing in collaboration with fintech companies. But then, as I said earlier, there are some allegations that we've heard about POS agents collaborating with banks and the officials for profiteering's sake, despite CBN rules, warnings, and threats. What's actually fueling this trend and the impunity that we've seen?
Well, you've said it correctly. It is an allegation. So we cannot exactly deal with the absolute facts and figures. But the understanding is that there is a perception that certain agents work with bank branches and co to buy cash, if you like, that they can use at their POS agent location. Let us keep in mind that today, Nigeria has 2.1 million, in quotes, POS devices in circulation, and about 1 million POS agents that are involved in that trade. In any environment in the world, when you have 1 million people that are engaged in any business, you will always find 1 or 2 people who are trying to take advantage of the system. That's normal. It doesn't mean that the entire system has a fault. In this particular instance, what has happened is that the fintechs have been able to innovate in such a manner that their devices, their POS devices, are more attractive to agents. But these fintechs don't have bank branches. And so even though you have a fintech device, POS, you really don't have a place where you can go on a daily basis to get cash. So because of that, some POS agents and some bank branch managers see opportunity and they go into some sort of private arrangement to make cash available to each other. That is not a failure of the system. It simply means that, in actual fact, it is because the system is working, that is why that practice has come up very quickly. And I can confirm to you that Central Bank today is working on a more structured approach for certified agents to be able to get access to cash in a more structured manner rather than the current private arrangement that is being perceived as pollution or corrupting the system.
And you think these efforts by the Central Bank of Nigeria will be able to deal with issues that you've mentioned around circumvention, fraud, illegal activities within Nigeria's financial system? You think that will be adequate?
Yeah, you need to keep in mind that when we talk about fraud or even criminal activities, the criminal activities or the fraudulent situation is not taking place because Nigeria has a payment system. In those days when people used to carry cash around, it was common for traders to be waylaid on their way to the markets. That's crime, but they were targeting the cash. Now that the payment has moved online, the same set of criminals or the new crop of criminals have simply moved online as well. So what we're saying is that there's crime everywhere. There's attempted crime everywhere. There's attempted crime in America, in London, in Dubai, in China, everywhere. Any system has a set of people that are trying to beat the system. What we must do is to have a team who are consistently monitoring such activities, and they are also consistently blocking those loopholes. Whether it will ever stop, that is not possible. It will never stop. It's like saying that policemen will stop having jobs at some day. There will always be criminals. But we know, and being operators in the system, that there is a consistent review of what is going on. So, for example, last year, the NIMS, which is the central switch, introduced a fraud reporting platform that makes it much faster to report a fraudulent situation at a POS situation compared to the past. And that has helped to create a situation where when fraud happens, it can be stopped much faster than it could be done just 2 years ago. So it is going to be a continuous battle for sure. As new solutions are introduced, new people will come up and try to beat the system, and the necessary people will come up and try to block them, and then life will continue, just like in Nigeria and any other environment.
Okay, so just to wrap things up and tying around your last statement, Nigeria has issues around having an efficient database, and we also hear of identity management crisis, which is actually a big problem in Nigeria. What are the fast solutions to dealing with those issues if we are hoping to have a fraud-free system whereby people can transact without fears of their data being compromised and, of course, their financial transaction being safe?
Sure, you are very right. So today, Nigeria has a national identity number system where all Nigerians from birth are supposed to get one. As of today, about 130 million of those numbers have been issued. That is a major improvement, because just 5 years ago, there were less than 10 million of those numbers in existence. So the expectation is that in another 3 or 4 years, every Nigerian from birth will essentially have a national identity number. But that is just stage one.
Okay.
One of the things that happened about a month ago is that the Minister of Digital Economy introduced the digital infrastructure for Nigeria. That infrastructure includes an integration of the national identity system, the BVN, which is the bank verification number, and a data exchange for Nigeria. The expectation is that when those three frameworks are integrated, it becomes easier to trace the identity of Nigerians, especially when they want to get involved in an economic or financial service. And that challenge.
All right. I think we'll put that conversation safely on that particular last point that you've made. Sola Bickersteth, Executive Director, Financial Inclusion Centers, FIC Professionals Network PLC. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.